Chi va lontan dalla sua patria vede cose da quel che già credea lontane, che narrandole poi non se gli crede, estimato bugiardo ne rimane. Canto 7 of Orlando Furioso is full of symbolism. It's full of highbrow references by Ariosto. It's full of Dante references, classic poets, and I'm particularly interested in the symbols and allegories. The first one that we have is when we are presented with Erifila. Erifila is this woman. She is dressed in a very colorful way, and she is defeated immediately by Ruggero in the first scene of the canto. What is very interesting is that we learn that Erifila is the mother of all these monsters that we've seen in the previous canto, and that we're impersonating or incarnating all the various human vices. So she's been birthed in them. And who is she an allegory for? Well, she's riding on an enormous wolf. And as we know from Dante, from Dante's Inferno, the wolf, especially the she-wolf, has always, let's say, symbolized, especially in ancient or in the Middle Ages literature, avarice and greed. So from greed, all these different monsters and vices are coming from. She is the mother of them all. Erifila gets defeated very quickly by Ruggero, but we also have the feeling that we're gonna meet her again in the rest of the poem, because as Ruggero makes for her head, he wants to chop her head off. The two damsels shout at him, ma le donne gridar, basti sia vinta, senza pigliarne altra vendetta acerba. Ripon cortese cavalier la spada. Passiamo il ponte e seguitiamo la strada. This is stanza number 7. So Ruggero decides to not kill Erifila and proceeds. He heads toward the damsels actually leading to the palace of Alcina, in the beautiful Alcina, where he is promptly bewitched. This is what happens to Ruggero. Now here we have another perfect example of entrelacement. This is the style that Ariosto is using of intertwining his plots and subplots in a very beautiful way. In this particular case, what happens is that we are only explained towards the end of the canto why this strange love story between Ruggero and Alcina happens in Canto 7. As soon as Ruggero and Alcina meet in stanza number 9, they immediately fall in love. There is a beautiful and long description of Alcina's beauty, which is also interesting because it tells us what kind of ideal of female beauty people had in Ariosto's times, in the Renaissance, in Italy at least. So it's very, very detailed, this description of her beauty, which we will learn towards the end of the canto, that it's only her apparent beauty. And Ariosto's irony always strikes, I think, especially in stanza number 14, where he says non potria d'altre parti veder argo, ben si può giudicar che corrisponde a quel che appar di fuor, quel che s'asconde. He mentions Argo from the classical myths. He was a mythical character. He had 100 eyes, and that's why he was used by Juno to guard some other character. As readers, we are probably instinctively are protesting against Ruggero's behavior here, because we know that he's in love with Bradamante, and we also know that he's just had a conversation with Astolfo, who is trapped in the tree, in the myrtle tree, and Astolfo has warned him about Alcina. So, knowing all that, how come that Ruggero is so dumb, let's say, to fall into this spell, this love spell? But he does, and Ariosto explains to us in stanza 16 that there's not much that he can do, even if he was a good person with a good heart, che inganno o tradimento non gli è avviso, che possa star con sì soave riso. The magic of her beauty was too strong for anybody to resist. If we look at stanza number 4, in fact, of the canto, and we go back a little bit, he is talking about big walls, and so non credo con si grande Apulia n'abbia. Apulia is Puglia today, the region which is the heel of the boot of Italy, the heel of the boot. And it was famous even in the Middle Ages, but even earlier, for having particularly large walls. This, in fact, is something that came in terms of a knowledge to Ariosto through the poet Horatius. Just if we want to be really, really highbrow here. Another reference to classic myths and literature comes in stanza number 20, where Ariosto says, "Qual mensa trionfante e suntuosa, di qual si voglia successor di Nino." He mentions Nino, who was the king of the Assyrians, and he was very famous in literature for giving incredible banquets, huge banquets, and all of his successors were as well. So Ariosto is mentioning that. And di Cleopatra al vincitor latino, the Latin winner or victor. So there was the Cleopatra's banquets that were given for Mark Antony. This is what Ariosto is referring to. So this magic palace, or we can call it resort of Alcina, because it has lakes and fields, reminds me of something like a Luna Park. A Luna Park that was included in the story of Pinocchio. If you read the whole story of Pinocchio, you know that at some point Pinocchio and his friends end up in this Luna Park where they have a lot of fun, they do whatever they want until they wake up to be transformed into donkeys. And really the moral of the story is very similar here for Ruggiero, who is enthralled and bewitched by Alcina and all these pleasures that he can have here. We need to get to stanza 33 before the plot is picked up again. Bradamante, she is very sad because she is still looking for Ruggiero. The last time she saw him, he was flying away on the hippogriff, and so she's doing whatever she can to find him, to look for him. So Bradamante plans to go back to Merlino's tomb, where she received all the prophecies about her future, and she wants to talk with Merlino again. She wants to ask for help, basically. Here comes the sorceress Melissa, who we've already met before. She has been following Bradamante because she loves to follow the destiny of these two ancestors of the Estensi, Bradamante and Ruggiero, and she goes and meet with Bradamante, and finally we get the explanation of what exactly has happened. We understand that Atlante, the sorcerer in the steel castle, had ordered the hippogriff to bring Ruggiero to Alcina's island because Atlante loves Ruggiero so much that he wants to protect him from the prophecy that we heard about Ruggiero having to die after his marriage and after converting to Christianity. So in order to avoid that from happening, he's preferring a life of pleasure, and it's one of the first times that we can read a second and deeper meaning or message here that could be universalized, let's say, even to our life. Is it better to run a real risk in our life, but play out our destiny and be who we really are, or is it better to just be lascivious and abandon ourselves to pleasures and not run risks in our life? This is the interplay that is happening in this canto. And we get to understand the real power of Melissa in this Canto 7 as a sorceress. She's really powerful, and she's the perfect help for Bradamante and Ruggiero. Atlante had made this decision to focus on keeping Ruggiero alive because that was his type of love for Ruggiero. The difference for Melissa is that she is looking at the long term, at the destiny of Ruggiero and Bradamante and the prophecy that she's been sharing with Bradamante. So she's not interested much in just simply preserving his life. She wants the good of Bradamante and Ruggiero, and this is why she is a better helper for them in the end. And then in stanza 50 we have Dante again, which obviously makes me happy because we have a very clear reference to some names of devils or demons, let's say. Ariosto says, credo fosse un alchino o un farfarello. I'm interested in what your translation of Orlando Furioso says here, stanza 50, but this Alcino and farfarello are probably kept in the original because they are names of devils that Dante made up in Inferno, Canto 21, where he is listing a lot of different and funny names of devils and demons. This is simply Ariosto trying to guess the name or the source, the origin of this incredible horse, who's a black horse with a red foot that Melissa uses to ride very fast and go to the island of Alcina. An important role in this canto is played by the magic ring. Let's not forget the ring, because every great fantasy story must have a magic ring, right? And in this case, the ring, we've already seen it, it gives invisibility, but it's also so powerful that apparently it can eliminate any other spell around it. So Melissa takes it from Bradamante, they agree about that, and first she uses her own powers to transform herself in a beautiful scene into Atlante, the old Atlante, the sorcerer, and to present herself to Ruggiero in this type of authoritative figure and father figure manner, and try to talk some sense into Ruggiero. As soon as Ruggiero wears the ring, is one of my favorite stanzas in this canto, because Ariosto says, Ruggiero si stava vergognoso e muto. He was shameful and without speaking, muto. Mirando in terra e mal sapea che dire. He's looking towards the ground. He's very ashamed of himself. A cui la maga nel dito minuto pose l'anello e lo fe risentire. He comes back to himself, to his senses. So finally they agree on an escape plan, Melissa and Ruggiero, and it's really beautiful. It's almost like watching an action movie, the way that Ruggiero goes back to Alcina, the sorceress. He actually finally sees her for how ugly she actually is, and but she pretends not to, because he needs to be careful. And in the last few stanzas, there are many references back to Orlando Innamorato, in particular the name of the sword, which is Balisarda, that Ruggiero picks up, the name of the horse himself, Rabican. Rabican was a horse that's been already told about and seen in Orlando Innamorato. And so in a very heroic way, Ruggiero is able to escape from the palace of Alcina. He fights the guards at the exit door, or let's say the bridge that separates the palace from the rest of the island. And on the back of Rabican, the horse, he runs away towards Logistilla, who is the good one out of the three sisters. How is it possible to keep track of all these plots and subplots and all the lines that Ariosto is weaving here? It's just a lot of fun. Please let me know, not only if you're enjoying it, but if you have some particular stanzas that, because of the language the translator has used, if it's Barbara Reynolds or other translators, you specifically like. Let me know if you have a favorite stanza out of this canto. That would be really interesting to discuss. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching, and we'll speak again for Canto 8.